ready to celebrate?
Whoa.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Hashtag Celebrate Columbus show. My name is Josh Burnett, and I'm super excited to have this episode today. I've got 3 great guests that have been investing in our community for a long time, and we're so glad to have them in the studio. They've been serving our community in various ways for 5, 10, 20 years, and we're so excited to be able to talk about their work and to highlight the contribution that they have to our community. Thank you guys for being on the show today.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Well, very excited to get to introduce them to you. Many of you will know them, will know their face, know their name, but I'd like to introduce you to them. So who better than do that for themselves than themselves? So John, would you mind go ahead and just tell us a little bit about you and your history in Columbus?
Sure. My name's John Burnett, and full disclosure, I am Josh's uncle. Have been your entire life.
Yes,
so,
you have.
Grew up here in Columbus, moved away and back 5 times. So great poster children, the Burnett family, for the Chamber of Commerce. But served as a school teacher, college tennis coach, and was an executive at Cummins in Human Resources, and then did a crazy thing, bought a business, grew it, sold it, and then for really almost the last 20 years I've been doing work on behalf of and in service to the community through the Community Education Coalition. So thank you for having us here today.
Thank you. Jack?
Sure, I came to the community about 24 years ago, fresh out of Ball State as a Cardinal, entrepreneurship degree, and there was a tremendous opportunity here in this community with a business incubator, and it was a tremendous 10 years of working with over 2,500 entrepreneurs in the region. We'd raised capital, wrote business plans, helped them get into business, and it was just a fantastic experience. From that, there was really a great overlap with what the Chamber of Commerce was doing with its strategic plan at that time. So joined the board. We began to really build up services there around entrepreneurships, and became kind of a really nice, just mashing those two things were more and more becoming one. So I officially joined the Chamber of Commerce. And 6 years we were there. And the thing, I think the way our work really got overlapped is John's office was right next to mine. We were 15 steps, I think, apart. And not only did our offices join, but our work plans totally joined, and that we saw the development of people is economic development. Mm-hmm. So most of the work that we'd really done was completely collaborative and joint to kind of make that happen. And then from there, that kind of transitioned into the formation of Civic Lab, which is the work we actually do now. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, I'm Kathy Oren. Been in Columbus since 1986. So I came out of Purdue along with my husband Dan. We were both Purdue engineers and came to work at Cummins. And I was with Cummins from 1986 until 2013. I had roles in as an engineer, industrial engineer, in the parts and service business, the aftermarket, manufacturing, and ultimately in marketing. And it took 6 years off in the middle to raise my 3 boys when they were young. And as in 2013, had the amazing opportunity to come work for John Burnett with the Community Education Coalition, and it's been a great opportunity for me to be more engaged in my community with this work.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys being on the show. So we're going to tell Columbus a little bit about what you do, because I've read several headlines in the news. I've read some different things all over the place about amazing things you're doing, but you guys are so busy with your work that I had to get you in the studio to learn more about it and help Columbus really appreciate it. So, John, tell us a little bit about the Community Education Coalition of Columbus. What is it?
Well, the Community Education Coalition is a collaborative that brings together our education partners, and specifically in our own county, Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation and Flat Rock Hawk Creek. And then we also serve IU Purdue Columbus, Ivy Tech, and Purdue Polytechnic. What most folks don't know about us is that we also serve 6 other organizations: the city, the county, Heritage Fund, the hospital, the Board of Aviation Commissioners, and the workforce system. So our organization is actually an organization that serves 11 public entities, and in turn, that gives us the opportunity to do work regionally and in the state and beyond by serving those particular partners. So we've had it's hard to believe, but it's been 20 years now. We're celebrating our 20th year. And the start of the Community Education Coalition actually came out of the Economic Development Board study commissioned with the Hudson Institute. And it said, in order for Columbus to be successful in the future, really need to focus on education, education, education. The human being is the most important part of civic society and most important part of economic growth and economic development. So how can we connect learning to economic development and quality of life in Columbus, which is where we started, and then 10 years ago started into the ECHO network, which Kathy can talk a lot more about, and Civic Lab, which Jack can talk a lot more about. So.
Awesome. It's been we've talked a little bit off camera about the organic growth of your organization as well as your partners that you all have gotten to work with. Kathy, who are some of those people that you work with, and what is the ECHO network?
Boy, that's a big question. So we work with hundreds of employers in a 10-county region. And the ECHO network started back in about 2007 through a significant grant from the Lilly Endowment. And the idea was, as John mentioned, our work is about aligning our education system with the needs of the workforce. And in the county that we serve, the 10 counties of southeastern Indiana, the educational attainment rate is just over 30%. So that means 70% of our adults in this region do not have an associate's degree or higher.
Wow.
And so a lot of our work is about lifting up folks, maybe low income, maybe first generation, maybe underserved populations, helping them identify career pathways that lead to well-paying jobs that are in high demand by our employers. So through the original grant, through the Lilly Endowment, we were able to take this work, this collaborative work that was so successful in Columbus, and take it out to the 10-county region, and it provided funding for resources and programming in 10 counties. And the initiative was called ECHO 15, Economic Opportunities through 2015 and beyond. And that's one thing we learned: never put a name or a year. Never put a year in your name.
Right.
And so we now call it the ECHO Network. And what's amazing about the ECHO Network is that work was very successful. There was an initial 3-year grant and then a 5-year extension from the Lilly Endowment. And what's happened is the local county work, education, and employers in each individual community evolved into a network. So we now have cross-county collaboration. We have a 10-county-wide manufacturing network. We have a 10-county-wide healthcare network. And we're working on an IT network and looking into logistics and other kinds of industry sectors. So the work has really grown and evolved, and it's all about relationships and partnerships.
And if I might add, the underpinning network is in addition to advanced manufacturing, healthcare, and IT, is the education attainment network. So it is there to be the underpinning to really keep a focus on an attention for high school graduation, post-secondary credentials, 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees, and beyond. Because, as Kathy mentioned, this particular area, we're blessed with terrific employers throughout the region, and we also know that the work is going to require more and more education, higher levels of education over time. And I think we would also be remiss if we didn't say out loud, Lilly Endowment has invested $43 million in ECHO.
Wow.
It's an amazing story. Thanks to them, and thanks to our partner Heritage Fund, the Community Foundation of Bartholomew County. We joined ourselves at the hip with Heritage Fund. Thanks to the endowment, it spread out through the other community foundations in the region, and then involved hundreds of employers and, as Kathy has mentioned, 22 school districts, Ivy Tech, IUPC, Purdue Polytechnic. So a huge collaborative environment, the workforce development system, Works Council. That $43 million, since I'm on a roll, also caused the community, especially Cummins, thanks to a lot of their employment and employment growth, helped invest significantly along with other partners, including state government. So in total, the community and the region has leveraged over $80 million in investment into ECHO. So I wanted to make sure I shared that because it is a huge collaborative. The three of us happen to be there to serve others, but it's really the collaborative folks that have done so much to make so much great stuff happen, to use a technical term.
Josh, the other thing I'll mention that leads into what Jack does and John is, what is it that we do, right? It's one thing to say we have a network of hundreds of employer partners and education partners. It's harder to describe what we do. We really, for the most part, aren't about programs. The work that we do is facilitate discussions among education, community, and business partners. We use a common process, the Civic Lab process of stakeholder engagement, and that makes sure that we agree on what are we trying to accomplish. Is it increasing educational attainment in certain areas, certain career pathways? Many different problems are discussed around the table, but we make sure we get the right people in the room. We're data-based. We gather data to understand what's the current state of the problem. And then the secret is really this work of co-creating solutions with partners based on that data that we can implement together. And the question we're always asking our partners is, what is it that we can do together as a group, as a coalition, that none of us in our individual organizations can do alone? And the process that we follow is really an important piece of that work.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So Jack, tell us about the Civic Lab and all the awesome things you guys are doing.
Well, to Kathy's point, few communities have probably had as a robust public-private partnership as Columbus. I think it's well known historically, nationally, and in some now cases internationally. And I think the most visible perspective of that is probably the Cummins Architecture Program. People obviously know the way the public and the private sector work together under the stewardship of J. Oren Miller to really solve a problem that benefited not only a company and a whole business economy, but also at the same time a community and its quality of life. So the state of that story is about 7 years ago, we were kind of getting worried, is that story and that process and that way of working together, is that going to be able to transcend the next generation coming out of the boomers, many of whom are retiring, going on to the second chapter and phase of their careers and lives? And are we going to be able to successfully get that to Xers like myself and millennials like yourself? We decided we didn't want to leave that to chance, right? We don't want that to be a reactive, hope it happens. We want that to be a very proactive, let's make it happen. So 7 years ago, Civic Lab was formed in concept, and we began to go out and interview the leaders that have made those public-private partnerships happen. And really our purpose was threefold. One, see if we can discover what the process is. What were the ingredients when it went well? What processes were people using? Where did it break down and what was learned? Two, you document it. So you take something very invisible, a process, and you make it tangible, concrete, so something that people can actually see. And then the third thing is what we do with Civic Lab is we share it, not only within our community to the next generation of leaders, but we also share it throughout our 10-county region, the work that Kathy shepherds and stewards, but also through Indiana and even now, luckily the nation itself. Our work has touched over 265 communities that want to know about the Columbus story and doing their work, and we've trained and we've shared the story with over 8,000 community leaders about how this kind of partnership works, what are its fundamentals, and how they can get better at it.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I know last year when I was at the talent conference, and just learning from you all and learning more about our history as a community, in order to, plan and do things that are good in the future, we have to look back to the history, right? And learn from what we've done. Jack, we were talking off camera about the city's historical influence on your work and how we're going to make sure that that same spirit flourishes in the future. Could you talk a little bit more about that, maybe specifically for those who might not know the Columbus story, even though they're from Columbus? I know, the Columbus movie in general was a great reminder of that all these people around the world are celebrating Columbus. And we grew up here, and sometimes we don't fully appreciate it. So, act like me or people watching don't know the Columbus story. Like, how has the city's history influenced your work, and what are we going to do to make sure that that continues?
So it goes back to the baby boom right after the Second World War. This community had to try to figure out how to bring on a new school every 2 years for the next 15 years as a result of that boom. It hadn't built a school prior to that for 20. So it didn't have really any experience in that. Its first school, the Jefferson School, I think by all practical accounts, was kind of an unmitigated disaster in terms of its design, its development, and its ultimate demise a very short time into its maintenance schedule. Very institutional, just not what you would think of as the Columbus way. At the same time, you've got, a young entrepreneurial startup across town who has lost money for 17 straight years and has been charged to start to figure out how to make a profit. And they bring in, the Miller family as the investor in that young entrepreneurial startup, and they bring in their son, young J. Oren Miller, fresh out of Yale, right out of college, liberal arts major with no management or business background or experience per se, and told it, see what you can do with that struggling little startup. And, through his very different way of management thinking, which is the stakeholder model, which is you take care of all stakeholders, not just the shareholder, the company began to grow. And when the company began to grow, we ran into a new problem, which is how do you get smart, talented people to come live in a community in which few people had ever heard of and has lousy looking schools. Right? A big undertaking and a big task. So a part of the model, which makes it work so well, to Kathy's point, is what can we do together that none of us could do on our own? And that was the Cummins architecture idea. Right? It's a win for everyone. It's a great deal for taxpayers. It's a great deal for quality of life in the community, and it attracts talent. So the economic win there is obvious because it allows companies to grow. So that had been the story, of the main set. But I think it's kind of articulated in this last kind of quote from his. When he was inducted, J. Oren Miller, in the Building Hall of Fame, he flew out to Washington, D.C., and of course you think he's going to talk about architecture, and he doesn't.
Wow.
He says architecture is something you can see, but there's an invisible part of this community of Columbus I'm very proud of, because in a democracy, the process is more important than the product, and that was always his mantra. And what really Civic Lab does is we try to document that process, right, share it broadly and improve upon it. That invisible thing that makes those buildings happen. It makes the Columbus way, really brings it to life in a very animated and real way through this work.
And so much of the Columbus way that you're just describing is the collaborative nature, right? And Kathy, we talked a little bit about collaboration. Why is that so important for our community and for us to spread that message?
Well, it just gets back to what we can accomplish together. And if you think about some examples of things that have been accomplished through the C.E.C. over the years. You look at the Columbus Learning Center, built in, I think, 2004. Most of
Opened in 2005, specifically.
Yes. And it's such a community collaborative effort. It is, as I understand it, the first shared facility in the state among Ivy Tech, Purdue, and IU, and Work One we have in that building. It's a unique situation where it's a building that's owned by the city and funded by the state. But at the crux of it, it came about because of the community, because of collaboration between our community and the state, and it continues to thrive because of the collaboration of the partners. Another example would be the iGrad program. There was a Cummins, I think it was a Six Sigma project, looking at high school graduation rates in collaboration with the education partners, understanding root causes of low graduation rates, why do students drop out. And the solution that was co-created was a program called iGrad that supports students from grades 8 through 12 that are at risk of dropping out. And since the implementation of iGrad, the dropout rate in Bartholomew County has been reduced by 50%. So you look at that chart, the dropout numbers have just dropped, literally. So those are just some examples of why collaboration is important. It's in particular iGrad. iGrad provides coaches and tutors to students that are Ivy Tech employees. They're embedded within Flat Rock, Hall Creek, and BCSC schools. And so it's a true collaborative initiative. It serves students from middle school and into their post-secondary careers. So there's a lot that can be done through collaboration.
iGrad's a great example. So early on, the study that was done, the numbers that Kathy is citing, those are the most at-risk kids. So the students who were most likely to drop out, now 95% of them are graduating from high school. That's a tribute to BCSC, to Flat Rock, Hall Creek, and to Ivy Tech, who actually employ the coaches. And then Heritage Fund, Cummins Foundation, and our own C.E.C team funded the startup of iGrad. Now it's really BCSC and Ivy Tech, who over time will be funding more and more of that, in the community less so. So there's the financial piece of it, and most importantly, there's the human aspect. So the overall graduation rate for BCSC is getting close to the mid-90s now. So helping the students who are most at risk, plus continuing to serve and support the pre-K to 12 system is really, really important for the future of our community, as is the post-secondary work as we described earlier. So as you mentioned off camera, it's really hard to describe what we do.
Yeah.
In fact, our families don't really know what we do.
Right, yes.
My wife's a third grade teacher, and I've tried to explain several times, and she's very smart, much smarter than me. My kids, these two folks and their families, but yeah, we are here to serve and support the partners who are serving the students and who employ people. So really the reason why probably a lot of folks don't know much about us is because it's not about us. It's about being of service to all those organizations that are educating people and employing people.
And I think that fits in perfectly of why I wanted to have you all on the show, is because your work and you as individuals contributing to our community are worth celebrating. And so I'm just glad we got you on camera to talk about it rather than behind the scenes, and we appreciate that. But I think it's important, for our community to understand, the people and the processes behind why our community continues to thrive, no matter what the economic conditions are, no matter what's going on politically around the world. We've got something special here in Columbus that we're trying to continue and not only make our community better, but surrounding communities and all those other great people that you're getting to work with. So I think that's awesome just to be able to share that.
So can I mention one
Of
other
course,
thing?
of course.
So most recently,
Uh-huh.
I'm surprised none of us have talked about it yet. So it's overnight sensation, right? How did this collaborative gain so much success overnight? Well, the answer is it didn't.
Right.
It's taken 2 decades, really, building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And so most recently, Lumina Foundation, the largest private foundation in the country, focused on one thing, ensuring that at least 60% of all adults in America obtain a post-secondary credential. So a 1-year certification, 2-year degree, 4-year degree, and beyond. Columbus, Indiana, and Southeast Indiana, through the ECHO network, just recently announced that it is one of 17 talent hubs in the country. And the rest of that list includes the following: New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, Louisville, Cincinnati, on and on. Nashville, Tennessee, and Columbus, Indiana, and Southeast Indiana. We are one of 2 by far smallest communities, regions in the country. So that's another thing to celebrate because of this huge partnership that's going on.
That's awesome.
Of course, we're used to being on lists that have a lot bigger communities and cities, where it's architecture, education. We always punch way ahead of our weight. So
Yeah, we might be a small town, but we have some big, I think, goals
yeah.
and some big responsibilities to continue with what J. Erwin Miller and so many people in our community started. What are some exciting things that you all are doing now or upcoming that we can maybe talk about?
Well, I'll follow up on the Lumina designation. So there were two parts to this announcement with the Lumina Foundation. The designation is really the important piece, to be designated as an exemplary in this type of work, along with 16 other communities around the country. Along with the designation came a grant, and we submitted a proposal that was approved, and we're going to be focusing on increasing the educational attainment rates of adults with no college in the 10 counties of the ECHO network. And it will specifically focus, as I mentioned before, it'll focus on low-income adults and Latino adults. So the Latino population is the most rapidly growing population in our region, and the education gaps there are pretty strong. Over 30% of our adults in the 10 counties are at 200% of poverty, which means they're barely making enough to pay the bills and keep moving forward. They're working, but if they have one setback, whether it be a transportation issue or an illness, they're really going to struggle. We'd like to see that 30% number really decrease. And we see education as a pathway out of poverty. So we're super excited about this initiative. It's an adult-focused talent hub initiative. It's being led by Kathy Huffman on our team, who is our ECHO Attainment Network regional manager. And it's a partnership with Ivy Tech, 3 Ivy Tech campuses, Columbus, Madison, and Lawrenceburg, and with our adult education centers. So River Valley Resources, McDowell here in Columbus, and Jennings Adult Education Center. And a little known fact, our adult ed centers in our region are outperform other adult education centers across the state. So we're targeting to bump the number up by 3,900 people in the next 3 years. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think for me, even though we work with so many communities, it's the work going on in this community that excites me the most. In particular, a good example with Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation. Under the leadership of Dr. Jim Roberts, they've really taken the stakeholder engagement process and adopted that as their entire continuous improvement model for the whole school. So all the way from school board down to the classroom, which is really an exciting thing. So you talk about wanting to embrace that process and use it to better the community and education and therefore students. That's an exciting thing. But probably more recently, using that process, they actually went for counseling counts, and that's an attempt to turn the whole high school and school counseling model inside out. So you're actually using and leveraging the community stakeholders to deliver services and care and support to students. And it's starting with mental health. And they're making a tremendous amount of investment in trying to really build the infrastructure, a whole community-wide system where almost everyone's counselor in the community to help and support on those aids and those efforts. But it's a good example of the stakeholder engagement process in action and what you mean when you bring together the public, private, and social sector. And if they have a common language and a common way of work together, what can be achieved to make a substantial impact on students, youth, and the overall community.
Wow, that is exciting.
There's so many things going on, it's hard to list just
Right,
a few.
right.
I would also lift up the work that's going on locally and throughout the region with the ECHO Advanced Manufacturing Network. I can say this unequivocally because it's not us saying it, it's others from outside the community, around the state, and well beyond. We have one of the finest manufacturing education partnerships in the country. Stephanie Weber is on our team, and she shepherds that along with Jackie Hill from Jackson County. And then you name it, the manufacturers are at the table along with our school districts and with Ivy Tech and IUPC and Purdue Polytechnic. So I think if somewhere along the line you might enjoy talking with Stephanie and that group. They've just got so much going on. It's a huge, very robust network, and it truly is a network. So things happening here in Greensburg and Batesville and Seymour and Brownstown and Madison and Rising Sun, and if I keep going, I could, and I'll also leave somebody out, and someone will be, a little bit myth that I don't remember them, but it's just there's that much work going on. From pre-K, we could spend an hour talking about the importance of early learning and brain development and the growth in the capacity here that has taken place with the private and faith-based, and especially BCSE stepping up. So from pre-K all the way through higher education to supporting the community through Civic Lab, it's an amazing journey that we have the privilege of supporting each and every day.
That's awesome.
One last thing.
Yeah, go for
Because
it.
Jack didn't mention. You going to mention our work with Talent Hubs on the Civic Lab side?
Yeah, so Civic Lab is also what they call a technical assistance provider. I think it's a fancy name for coach to those particular Talent Hub communities that John mentioned. So there's only one of two national partners that Lumen has chosen to really help. So we're responsible for what they call partnership health, which is, again, I think a term for collaborating well. But we are the really premier partner that helps all of those different Talent Hub sites around the country, again, just get better at what we call collective capacity, which is just working better together.
So we got to share them with these other communities.
Yes. Yeah, you guys have taken your show on the road. I know you go to a lot of different places, and we're very thankful that you've chosen to have Columbus as your hub, as I know we're better for that. Before we get going, I just want to ask you a couple more questions that maybe might be a little bit difficult, but I know this one matters to me a lot because we like to ask every guest. You're so used to helping others. How can we, those watching, those who live in Columbus, how can we support and encourage and be a part of your mission with ECHO, with C.E.C., with Civic Lab? How can we be a part of that more?
I'll let somebody else answer first.
Well, I think, it's an interesting question because we aren't a program that's looking for volunteers.
Right.
We're facilitators of discussions. But what's important to me is that the community does see the value in this collaborative work, specifically the collaborative work around education and workforce. So if you're an employer, if you're an education partner, or if you're a community member who is interested in this work and you get invited to participate or you would like to know more about it, we would love to encourage you to engage. It's tough for partners that have, whether you're in whatever sector you're in, to have time for this kind of work. We all have our busy schedules and demands of our jobs, and our own work plans in our own organizations. And what we ask people to do is give up some time for community work. So we ask you to value that, support your employees if they're participating in the groups. Consider hiring some high school kids for internships or inviting some teachers to come in to do some externships and learn about career pathways. Any way that you as a community member, employee, employer, or educator can support these efforts, we would really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, because I think it means a lot to have, you're going around to all these different places, and we as Columbus, we really need to be a part of it and keep being a part of it and supporting it so those stories can continue, right?
We have a lot of work to do here. We
Yeah.
have a lot going on. There are a lot of opportunities, and as I mentioned with the educational attainment rate, we have a long way to go to help more people gain education that will lead to a better paying job. And if you're an employer, you know that it's very challenging to hire enough people to fill your jobs. And they need specific skills. They need people that are job ready, that are college ready. We're really looking at a lot more school to work kinds of programs, apprenticeship types of programs. So we're trying to meet those needs, and we encourage any and all support we can get.
Awesome.
I think my appeal would be to millennials.
Yeah.
And I really think that a lot of times they're reluctant to get, because they're waiting to be asked to be engaged. And
Yeah.
Don't wait to be asked to be engaged. Really just assume that we want you at the table, because we do. So we try to teach the Civic Lab leadership model and approach and process once a quarter. We bring in groups from all over the country. But what we've began doing is taking millennial positions, as we're calling fellows here locally, and we're embedding them into the class free of charge. as our way of, capacity building, again, sharing the story with the next generation of leaders. And we're involving them in that way so we can build not only their capacity, but the community's capacity and keep the process alive and well and developing. So the appeal is, for millennials, don't wait to be asked to engage, assume we want you engaged, proactively get engaged in these types of areas. And they can always contact us if they'd like to find out more, how they can get in any one of those training programs or be involved in one of the labs that we put on. They get to meet people from all over the country, strengthen their leadership skills, but also really learn about the fabric and what made really the public-private partnerships thrive here in the community. So that's our appeal. We'd love to have more millennials come in and be willing to be exposed to the story and participate in that kind of training and that kind of development.
Great question. It's also not an easy one to answer. So I'm going to piggyback on what Kathy and Jack have just shared. If you think about talent, attraction of talent, so bringing new people to the community is vital. It's part of the lifeblood of the future of our community. Developing local talent. So how do we make sure that as a community, and I'm talking about all parts of the community, serve and support human beings from the youngest children all the way through adulthood in continuing to pursue learning as something that is lifelong in nature. And so you attract talent, you develop talent, and then you engage talent. Engage means engaging all talent. People who are coming here, people who are here, so that we can create a more cohesive society called Columbus, Indiana. That's something to celebrate.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Columbus, I'm so glad that you were able to be a part of this conversation today. I know when I look back at all the work that we've done with Celebrate Columbus, one of the biggest influences of why we do what we do and how we're trying to evolve and get better at it is because of the Community Education Coalition and because of the work that you've done. I didn't know this until I got to go to the conference, and it just clicked one day that when you work with the private, public, and social sectors together to do anything, it's going to go well. And that's a part of the Columbus story. And I'm so glad that we got to be a part of this conversation, that you could meet some of the authors of the amazing things that are going on in our Columbus community, the collaborators. I know they might not like that part about the authors, but I give them credit. I want you to celebrate them and all that they're doing, because they're making our community better each and every day, and we need to support their efforts. So thank you for watching this edition of the #Celebrate Columbus show. I hope that you've learned a lot about our community and what makes it special and how we're going to continue to thrive together.